Welcome everyone, thank you for joining this morning's event. We will be talking about how to make the most of the self-assessment tool. So my name is Jade and I am the Wellbeing Campaign Manager at Business in the Community, and I'm joined by my colleague Kate Hinder. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Jade. Good morning, everyone. So I'm Kate Hinder and I am the Inclusion and Wellbeing Advisory Lead. So it's my job to work on a more one-to-one basis with businesses, and I was closely involved in the development of the WorkWell Self Assessment Tool.
Thanks, Kate. And everyone, if you would like to pop in the chat your name, your job title and the organisation you work for, that would be fantastic. So as for what to expect from today's session, so we've got until 11 o'clock this morning, and I will be taking you through the what, the why and the how of using the self-assessment tool, which you may hear us refer to as the SAT, just as an easier abbreviation. We'll also go through understanding the outputs of the report, how to take action once you have the report, and then Kate will be sharing a case study with you of a member who has used this to develop their wellbeing work. We hope to have some time spare for questions at the end, but if any do crop up for you throughout the session, put them into the chat and we'll follow up with answers if we don't get time for them all in the follow-up email. And to get us started, we want to hear from you who has completed the self-assessment tool. So if you've not used Slido before, you can get your mobile phone, scan the QR code, and it should bring you straight up to these questions. If you don't have a phone to hand, that's fine. You can put slido.com into your browser and put in the code 2116933 to access this poll. Just want to get a sense of who's used it, who's never used it before, or if you just are curious to learn what is this tool. So far, everyone has used it who's completed this and are looking how to best utilize it. And if you can't access the Slido for whatever reason, feel free to just pop it in the chat instead. So most people have used it and want to see how to best utilize it. That's great. You're in the right hands.
Morning, Sancha. Nice to see you.
Morning.
Okay, that's great. So we understand kind of where we're at with people in the room if you've used the tool. Thank you for completing that. So we're going to go into the what, the why, and the how of the self-assessment tool. First, starting us off with the what. So to understand the tool, I wanted us to first take a step back and start with the WorkWell model. This is the model that you see in the right bottom corner, and it's been broken out into its section in the center, so you can see each element of the WorkWell model more clearly. This model is a widely endorsed evidence-based model, and it was originally created in 2009 and then was updated in 2020 once the evidence for workplace wellbeing had strengthened. There's quite a lot of difference between what workplace wellbeing was in 2009 compared to 2020, so we did an update and refresh of the model. And it was developed by businesses for business using a rigorous process driven both by business needs, current thinking, and approaches to workplace wellbeing. And it was aimed at having a digestible format encompassing how wellbeing is ingrained into business practice and culture. And it provides a unique kind of gold standard framework and embeds wellbeing into culture and positions it as a strategic boardroom issue in order to have maximum impact for employees. You can see that at the center of the model is leadership, because we know how important it is for workplace wellbeing to be backed from the senior leaders at the top of the organization. So it's this model in which the self-assessment tool is based upon, and organisations' maturity levels are measured against. So that is the purpose of the self-assessment tool. It's to benchmark and measure organisations' wellbeing approach against these 7 elements that you can see on the screen. And when it was designed, the main things in which the team wanted to achieve was a simple and accessible tool for all organisations to be able to complete, no matter the size or the sector, and it's free for all organisations, available on our website. So we've spoken about what is it based on, what is this tool, and now why should you use this app? So our Slido told us that most of you have already completed the self-assessment tool, but if there's some of you on the call who have not completed the tool, here are some insights into why this will benefit your business. So the report that you receive after completing the tool, it gives you a matrix of what is required to improve your organisation's maturity to workplace wellbeing across those 7 elements that we just spoke about. And this can be used to strengthen your organisation's approach to be more holistic and guide you on how you can increase your maturity. So it might be that you're doing loads on the support, the specialist support that you offer organisations, but you haven't actually quite thought about the job design and how that impacts employee wellbeing. So this tool enables you to think about all the different elements across business that can impact employee wellbeing. And the matrix itself, which you'll find in the appendices of the report, can be used essentially as free advice on how to improve your organisation's maturity by looking at the next level of maturity and applying actions to reach that. And it gives you a real-time benchmark against other UK organisations to understand how mature your organisation's wellbeing approach is, which is great if you need to secure some extra budget or buy-in. Showing your senior leaders how you're comparing to the benchmark of the UK can help you with that business case as well. And if you have already completed the self-assessment tool, we recommend recompleting it either every year or every other year, depending on the pace of your business, really. So whether you've introduced new wellbeing initiative, or if you've enhanced your people strategy, or if you just simply want to understand how your organisation has evolved, then recompleting the assessment can help you demonstrate progress. So it can help with the case of why workplace wellbeing is so important, how the work that you're doing has matured the organisation's approach to wellbeing, and can help you shape future plans using this regularly to inform the action plan for the year ahead or the couple years ahead. Now, how should you use the self-assessment tool? So we recommend that you convene a group of relevant stakeholders for a holistic view of activity across the organisation. So depending on the roles that you have within the organisation, this could be, for example, your wellbeing lead, your HR lead, your learning and development lead. You may want to bring along your wellbeing network chair and their sponsor, having the D&I lead as well. You may want to include union reps, your colleagues from employee engagement and the benefits team. So anyone who kind of has a finger on wellbeing, it would be good to convene with them to really understand how different areas of the organisation are working on your approach to wellbeing. And we recommend having around 90 minutes will be enough to complete the self-assessment tool. This is completed via the BITC website. It's a survey on our website. If you type in to Google BITC WorkWell Self Assessment Tool, it will come up for you, and then you can do this live on our website. If you did want extra support or some guidance to really understand a more accurate completion of this tool, you can do a workshop with an advisor at BITC to help you really understand where your organisation will be scoring with the self-assessment tool. The timings of this are an estimate. It really depends how many voices you have in the room. The more people, you might need a little bit more time depending on how chatty everyone is, but 90 minutes should be okay. And then once completed, the person who submitted the report on the website, the report that you receive, it will go to that person's email. So they'll receive it in their inbox. And the report will include a maturity level against each element of the WorkWell model that I showed you at the start, and how you compared to the benchmark as well. The benchmark is consistently updated with each new application submission that we receive. So it will be a live benchmark that you're looking at, and you should expect around a 10-day turnaround to receive your report after completing it on the website. And now we're going to look at the report itself. So what is it telling you, how to understand the report? There are some standardized parts of the report, which I'm not going to go into because it's just kind of an introduction to the report, which is pretty self-explanatory. I'll be going to the personalized elements for each organization to explain what they mean. So here you can see some example scoring. You'll receive both of these types of scoring. And the numerical version maps, it's the same as the Word version, but it gives you the percentage. So for example, this one on screen, they scored 40% in their overall scoring. It kind of just helps with the, well, what does this scoring mean? And how well is that? So that's why there's two versions. It could be that you use the percentage as a goal next time. I want to go up from 40% to 45%, for example. But what these different scorings mean, adopting is like level 1, so that will correlate to the 1 score. And then the next maturity level is embedding, which is like level 2. And then the next one is leading, which is level 3. And then the top maturity is transforming, which is level 4. So that's what the numbers mean. And that's kind of what those words mean in terms of their maturity levels. And then here's what the benchmarking will look like. We have put this in 2 different versions within the report, so you can kind of have different visual formats. One is the bar, and you can see that your score is the blue circle compared to the benchmark, which is the pink square. Same for the spider diagram, just laid out a bit differently, may help to interpret it that way visually. You can see kind of the gap between the score and the benchmark quite well. And again, your score is the blue circle, and it's compared against the benchmark, which is the pink square. And then in the appendices, so I mentioned these earlier on in how you can use the report, but this is kind of where the magic happens. So I've put the example scoring with the stars. So this is what this organization has scored for their leadership. They scored adopting, embedding. And this is where action plans can be built. So we can see here that they're currently not managing demand, but they know that they need to do something. So the next step for them may be to have someone responsible for well-being. Then they'll go to the next level of maturity, being embedding. And then they currently have limited understanding of their employees and what benefits their investments into well-being are having. And so the next step of maturity is to measure how their services are being utilized, whether there's training they have, if that's being utilized. And then this can inform the next step in being able to be embedding on the measuring and disclosing. And then we can see that they do have an exec sponsor for wellbeing, but to get to the next step of maturity, the sponsor needs to be ensuring that conversations are being had at the top table, and that senior leadership teams are reviewing wellbeing concerns and acting on those risks. So it's quite a practical way of how you can map your scores against the appendices and how that can inform actions that your organization needs to take. Just looking at the next level, how do we get there? What does this mean for our business? And then those next steps can inform the action plan. So what now? You've received the report, you've done the report, the self-assessment tool, you've received the report. What do you do with it? So as just discussed, you can use the insights from the report to inform your strategy and action plan. If you already have a strategy and action plan, but still want to use the report, then you can look at how it aligns to your current practice, to your current action plans, and challenge your organization to do more and do better based on the appendices and the maturity levels of the self-assessment tool. You can also think about, does what you've planned in your action plan align to your results of the self-assessment tool? If it's highlighted that you're really below the benchmark in inclusive culture, is that highlighted in your wellbeing action plan? Have you done loads on management support, but actually you haven't got that much specialist support? And do you need to have another look at your action plan to think about whether it is holistic, whether it is really aligned to the developments that your wellbeing approach needs? So you can use it as that kind of sense check of whether you're on the right track or not. And then you can use it for the business case. So I touched on this earlier, but comparison with other businesses can often push senior leaders into taking action. If they know that the organization is behind in comparison to peer organizations, it produces a good case to invest more into the wellbeing strategy. Also, if the leadership team believes that the team responsible for workplace wellbeing is well resourced and the activity underway is currently enough, looking at the SAT scores across different areas of wellbeing can actually highlight that there might be some more investment needed, and there might be some more resource needed in order to reach a higher level of maturity. So it's really good for that business case. Also, if you are performing well across all levels of the self-assessment tool, then you can use that to kind of highlight how well your team is doing and how this is really working well and your strategy is really working well. So it can be used for both sides as well. Okay, so like I said, if there's any questions on any of that that have come up, please do pop them into the chat. I don't have eyes on that right now, but I will be checking it. But for now, I'm going to hand over to Kate, who's going to go through a case study of how she's used the self-assessment tool with a member.
Thanks, Jade. Yeah, so that's where it gets interesting, right? So you've completed the WorkWell Self-Assessment Tool. You've got your report back. You've seen the ladder that we're asking you to climb across each of those 7 elements of the WorkWell model. What do you do with the information you've got? We have worked with lots of businesses to help them operationalize the WorkWell SAT. And I'm just going to focus in on one organization that we've worked with, which is a utilities company. And that's really interesting, isn't it? Because you've got a dispersed workforce, you've got a highly operational workforce, you've got very different kinds of roles and responsibilities within a business. So understanding what's going on across the organization, I think, can be quite challenging, and also devising solutions that work for everybody when you've got folks who are out in the front line in the field, sometimes lone working, health and safety considerations, all sorts of stuff going on. So the first thing we did was actually, Jade mentioned before the notion of getting the right folks around the table to actually complete the SAT. So the first thing we did was that we worked with the wellbeing manager to identify her stakeholders. It's a common misconception that the person who's got the word wellbeing in their job title is the one that's responsible for the wellbeing of everyone who works in a business. And of course, that's not possible. There are so many facets of work that are beyond your control. So making sure that you've got folks who can contribute to supporting workforce wellbeing around the table is really important. So you might think about, for example, in this instance, we looked at getting the equality, diversity and inclusion manager in, because who you are really informs your sense of how you're treated, whether you belong, and what your sense of well-being is inside an organisation. You've got the learning and development manager. You've got the health and safety lead. You've got the employee engagement person, because that, you know, there's so much that you can discover from using the intelligence that you get through employee engagement surveys, your Glint surveys and so on. HR, the team, you know, the team of business partners and the folks who do employee relations, invaluable sources of information, because often they're the folks who can tell you when things aren't working. So we know what our policies are supposed to do, we know what our practices are supposed to achieve, but is that how it's working in real life, and is it consistent across the business? So and in other organisations, we've worked with trade union reps as well, because that's very helpful in terms of, as I say, when things aren't as they should be, getting that intelligence around the table. So what that does, the first thing is it upskills everybody in workforce wellbeing, and the fact that it is this kind of shared responsibility across the organisation. And Jade, you're bang on. Leadership's the bullseye in the WorkWell model for a reason, and that's because if that commitment to wellbeing isn't visible, demonstrable, and resourced, then it becomes very challenging to look after people, to bring their best to work. So we did the SAT. The SAT told us, and that was a really interesting conversation, and I think it was a much richer outcome for everybody being around the table and talking about what they saw from their jobs and their parts of the business. It was also helpful that having representatives from different divisions within the business. So the folks, for example, that are running the IT have a very different experience of work than folks who are doing wastewater treatment. So thinking about that. So what did we do? We had a conversation about it, and what became clear was, once folks had understood this shared responsibility to contribute towards organisational wellbeing, well, then suddenly the whole of the people team is in play in terms of understanding how their work and behaviours are contributing to improving the wellbeing of everybody, because that's how you meet your organisational goals. So then it's about, so a team was created that included all those stakeholders that I mentioned: wellbeing, EDI, HR, engagement, learning and development. And that allows folks to make sure that everybody is pointing in the same direction, and that the strategies are aligned and mutually reinforcing, rather than being developed in isolation. A very practical outcome was that there was a huge commitment from the top of the table towards understanding the importance of mental health and well-being. So every member of the executive board undertook mental health training. So there we go. That's our leadership activation happening right there. And I think one of the, we know, and I'm sure everyone on the call does too, that the line manager is like is the kind of key intermediary between an organization and an individual. How your line manager supports you, looks after you, and protects you, I think sometimes can make a huge difference as to whether you can thrive in a workplace or not. And also it can impact your intention to remain or leave. So understanding the importance of line management, it's one of the 7 elements, is better line management. That was really important. And the organisation has placed a huge focus on gaining a consistent experience of line management for everyone who works there. So everybody, every single line manager, and that's everyone who's already there with line management responsibilities, and everyone who subsequently joins the organisation, will have core training on line management, so that they are clear on the expectations of them around how they look after their people. And that's brilliant, right? Because we can't ask people to uphold standards they're not aware are in place, and we have to give them the tools and resources to be able to do so. So that organizational focus on equipping line managers with the right knowledge, the right tools, and the right understanding of what their role is magic. And that's thousands of people. The other thing that I'm particularly chuffed with is that the organization has committed clearly to psychological safety being the foundation of operational success. And in short, we talk about psychological safety a lot. But what does that mean? Well, it's that team state of people feeling like they are included, that that they're fine and welcome as they are, that they're able to learn, which means they can make mistakes. You don't always get things right. So how people deal with mistakes and errors, it can be a learning point, or it can be, you can be castigated. That response is really important in the moment. That you understand everyone in the team understands what their contribution is, and that they're enabled to play their part. And then the challenge piece, which I think, once again, so a utilities business is safety critical, obviously. If you see things that aren't right, or you see ways in which things could be made easier, more efficient, more, more safe, then being able in your team to stick your hand up and make that suggestion is really important. So we did some work with the very senior team in the organization on psychological safety, and how it's the how things get done that's going to drive operational success, because healthy, happy, included folks who are valued and belong, they're the ones that are going to meet your business objectives. So I'm very proud of that organization, because what they have done is taken this data source, used it to inform conversation within the organization, then used it to drive conversation strategically at executive level. That's then turned into significant investment in the areas in which they needed, where there was lots of work to do, because it allowed folks to coalesce around that issue. And it is the start of the conversation, not the end of it. And that's the bit that I think is really important. Is it's the, as you say, it's the what next piece, isn't it? It's so you get your numbers back. How do you translate that into action that delivers results? Well, these folks really have. And of course, you can then measure your outcomes, not only through taking the SAT again, as the benchmark improves. Hopefully you want to improve with it. Because if you were in a strong position, you want to, you have to raise your game in order to maintain that competitive advantage, right? There's not a business going that doesn't have a need to recruit and retain the best of talent. So it's really helpful to have that check-in thing. And I think that's about it, really. But it was a lovely piece of work to do. And there are other folks on the call that we've also worked with through our advisory team here. And it's been an absolute pleasure to once again to integrate the work of the SAT, to help it to drive the strategy within those organizations. And I think sometimes, as you said before, Jade, that really practical thing of being able to make well-being a top table issue that has shared responsibility, not just that one person's duty. Back to you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kate. That really just highlights how impactful completing the self-assessment tool can be, and how it can lead to actions which are really going to make a difference across the business. And I think it's a really interesting point around the psychological safety piece. And that really just demonstrates the how-to in bringing the self-assessment tool to life. Because I think psychological safety fits across different elements of the WorkWell model. I'd say it comes up in better management, from managers being able to create a psychological safe team, better work in that people feel able to contribute, they have a good experience because they feel safe in their team, and also in inclusive cultures, and thinking about they feel like they belong, they feel like they're part of the team and can contribute and not be discriminated against because of things that they have said, for example. And on psychological safety, people on the call, watch out, because there is a guide coming that the ITC are in creation of, that is going to be launched next month in August. So if that's something you do want a bit more guidance on, we will be launching an employer's guide on that.
Love it.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kate. So thinking now about next steps. So we have some next steps from BITC. We're thinking about how we can develop this self-assessment tool further. We're coming up to the 3-year anniversary this October, and we are currently looking for sponsorship to enhance our WorkWell self-assessment tool. So we've spoken throughout this call how the scoring criteria can be used to build out action plans, but we're looking to develop the self-assessment tool so that we can provide expert-led recommendations aligned to the WorkWell model based on the organisation's maturity level. And then following that, there is, of course, always the option to work with advisors to bring these suggestions to life. But if you are interested in hearing updates on this, or if there's something that you want to be involved in, then you can scan this QR code and scroll down to the bottom of the page, and there is where you can register your interest in hearing more about this. You just need to put your name and your email address, and we'll get in touch with any further updates that we have on this, and you can see how you can get involved. But that's the next step we're taking to ensure that we are providing the best service we can for organisations to improve their approach to workplace wellbeing. And I want to hear from all of you what you think your next steps may be with your self-assessment tool report. If you have completed it already, then what you think you might do next. And if you're looking to complete it after today, how you're going to be using this self-assessment tool. So if you want to, again, scan the QR code, it will take you straight to these questions for you to answer. Alternatively, put slido.com into your browser, put in the code 2116933, and it will bring this up for you. If you can't access Slido or don't want to, then put it into the chat and we'll be able to see your next steps there. And if there is something else that I've not listed here, then feel free to pop that in the chat, or you can let us know directly via email. We really want to hear from you and how organisations are using this tool. It really helps us understand what we can do next, how we can develop it, and how we can enable organisations to really maximise their wellbeing approach. So
look at all this lovely action planning, Jade. It's great, isn't it?
Yes, fantastic. Got a few action planning answers, and another organisation is looking to maybe run a workshop to explore areas of development to influence the strategy. Fantastic. I'll give you a moment to answer that. And then we'll have some time for questions at the end. So if you have any questions stored up for us, then you'll have some time to ask those, hear what other questions people may have. And if you have any questions after this call today that you think of afterwards, then you can always email me. My email was in the event description and it will be shared on the next slide as well. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. So one organisation wants to share findings of the exec team for the business case. Fantastic. We love that.
We love this indeed. Very much so.
Yeah. So whilst that's still up, does anyone have any questions either for me or for Kate that you'd like to ask? Maybe how you can best use the tool? Anything that you want to know, anything you want us to go back on? Yes, yeah, please go for it.
Because I'm working at menopause at the workplace, do you think like employee who experience menopause can use this more better to experience this stage?
So are you thinking of using it from an employee perspective? Is that what your question is?
Yes.
So I would say that the tool is designed for organizations to measure their level of maturity across their wellbeing strategy. It's not really designed for individuals to complete for their own well-being, if that's what you mean. It's more like organization-wide, how they are supporting their employees with their strategy, if that makes sense.
My mean is because I work at like menopause at workplace, but both sides, just like employee and organization. But organization should give them a toolkit, like how to a better experience. Just so it's also for the organization side. Just
that's right.
like So do you think is this useful for this situation?
I would say, sorry if you don't mind me interrupting, Jade. I think that better specialist support is where this pops in. And it's a combination of better specialist support and inclusive culture, because loads of different people across your organization are going to have different lived experiences. They're going to be at different life stages. And if we're thinking of, so for example, I'm 55. I've worked in BITC for the last, 12 years, I think, possibly longer, which means that I've gone through menopause whilst I've been working here. So how did BITC look after me? Well, very well, as it happened. But other folks are going to have different needs. And of course, we're more than one thing at a time, right? So drilling into the better specialist support piece to understand how you're looking after all the kinds of folks that work for you, not just, the majority of your working population. This is where you look at the demographics of folks of who works in your business, and then make sure that no one's left behind in that specialist support service. And the other question I think we ask around that is, who's delivering those services? Are they fit for purpose? Are they delivered by the right kinds of people? So if you, for example, if you're a woman experiencing menopause, are you, is your EAP going to put you in touch with someone who knows about this issue? You don't have to explain yourself first before you get access to help and support. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
So I think, it's a free tool to use. So if you're working with organizations that want to think about how they support people experiencing menopause as well as everybody else, then using the self-assessment tool might help flush out, there might be a pun in there, forgive me if there is, how you're looking after basically, are you looking after people? And you can bring that to the top of the business.
Thank you for your answer.
Very welcome.
Any other questions?